Hey, what's up? This is Jasmine, J.O.C, and this is Popcorn and Slush movie review, where it's Sunday and we will be reviewing the movie Rustin. Also today what we'll be doing is eating a good Southern cooked meal. So I went to one of my favorite restaurants here in Atlanta called R.C. Kitchen on Gresham Road on the east side of Atlanta. And we're going to eat some soul food and we are going to talk about the movie Rustin. Here we go. So today we are talking about Rustin. Rustin is a movie that came out on Netflix in November of 2023. And this is about the organizer who organized the March on Washington, Bayard Rustin. And I thought that this was such a really good movie. I like that movies are coming out that are giving us different perspectives. It's not just like a regular Martin Luther King biopic or something like that, but it's giving us inner workings on something that iconically we know as the March on Washington, where Martin Luther King gave his speech. But we're understanding how it was organized, what it took, what barriers came up, and how people can kind of want to smutty your name in order for you not to get progress for the people who need it most. So I thought it was a dope movie. But before we get into all that, you see in front of me, I have a plate of some good Southern home cooked food right here. So as I said earlier, I went to one of my favorite restaurants in Atlanta called R.C. Kitchen, where every single day of the week you can go at any time, 7 days of the week, and they got some of the best Southern cooking. So if you ever in Atlanta and you don't feel like cooking, Sunday dinner or dinner whenever, I would say check them out. They're on Gresham Road in Atlanta. So I'm just gonna eat and talk about the movie Rustin. So for starters, what am I eating? Of course, I got some macaroni and cheese, some collard greens, some dressing with some gravy, fried chicken, and some cornbread. Then, of course, you got to have some dessert a little bit later. Maybe some peach cobbler or strawberry cake. Or even like, sometimes they even have sweet potato pie. But I didn't get any of that today. So let's talk about the movie. So first impressions of the movie. Again, I thought it was a really good movie. The actors in there were awesome. The man who played Adam Clayton Powell, even though Adam Clayton Powell didn't get a good rap in this movie, the actor who played him is one of my favorite actors. If you ever seen like Boardwalk Empire, he played Dr. Narcisse, and he was a part of the Marcus Garvey movie. I feel like that should be the next movie that needs to come out, a Marcus Garvey movie. I'm a big like civil rights person and I want to see a movie. Back on topic, the actor who played Adam Clayton Powell also was in Westworld on HBO, and he was also in the new movie that's out, American Fiction. I definitely want to check that out and see what it's about. And then the actor who played Rustin, I guess he's also plays Mr. in The Color Purple. I haven't seen that movie. And of course, who played A. Philip Randolph, who is from a different world, and he's been acting for a long time. I remember like my dad used to like tell me about the movies that he was in growing up. Just a really dynamic cast, great actors, and they played their roles really good. So I think first impressions of the movie were awesome. The actors did such a good job. Even seeing like some of the civil rights activists like Whitney Young, John Lewis. And if you're from Atlanta or you know anything about Atlanta, you know how important John Lewis is to the city and to just Georgia and Congress in general. So just seeing those actors play those parts, it like kind of puts you in the setting of like, wow, look how young John Lewis was. Look what he was doing. So first impressions, that was really good. And then also, I like the concept of this movie because when you think about the March on Washington, you really just think about Martin Luther King giving his speech, Mahalia Jackson singing her song, and just the massive amounts of people that were there. A lot of us can't say that we have, a lot of us never even went to the March on Washington. One, because we weren't even born yet. Well, a lot of us were not even born yet, so we can only go on the experiences and the history that was provided to us, as well as just experiences from our grandparents or their parents. So when I also think about the March on Washington, I think about my grandmother. And I remember when we were dropping my brother off in college in DC, like a while ago, when we dropped him off in college, we went to the Lincoln Memorial, and we stood, like, if you go to the Lincoln Memorial in DC, it's a spot that has it's like a little sign in the ground in the marble, and it says, "This is where Martin Luther King stood and gave his March on Washington, his I Have a Dream speech." I stood in that spot. And so as we looked out, you could just see how long it goes. But then my grandmother was standing next to me, and my grandmother told the story of what it was like when she went to the March on Washington, and what it was like to be a Black person during that time, as well as her experience. And she just talked about how nonviolent it was. She talked about like the fashion, like she just kept talking about the fashion. And just how like people were dressed, and people were just so proud and so excited to be there, to experience that, to witness that. And I just had so much pride in knowing that, one, my grandmother was there, and two, that I had the opportunity for her to tell me the story on what it was like, as well as stand in the spot that Martin Luther King stood while she told me that story. That was just so powerful for me. So that's why this movie kind of hits a little hard for me, because I'm like, I'm a generation, two generations under someone who actually experienced it, and I get to tell my children one day that same story about how my grandmother was there as well. First impressions, the movie was really, really good. I love the concept of it. And then, lastly, some lessons that I learned in the movie. Clearly, I'm not finna eat this whole food here, but it's hitting. Some of the lessons that I learned is, number one, March took 7 weeks to organize. Just imagine like stuff that you have going on in your life and how long it take you to organize and get stuff together. They were able to organize a march that had over 200,000 people in 7 weeks. And not only that, but they did it in a time to where there was segregation, there was discrimination. There was a time to where Black people had to use the green book. I think that's what it's called. But the green book that told them where they can go safely to get gas, to eat at restaurants, to go in hotels. And they were able to organize that many people in Washington, D.C. That's a fleet in itself. For them to get transportation, what did they say? Buses, airplanes, trains, transportation, like, that is amazing. How many people can even say they can do that in this day and time, in the year 2024, 2023 that we just got out of? Like, a lot of people can't say that they could do that. And I love seeing like young people, like people of all races, of all colors, coming together to organize that. Like, that was like the new ideas. And the lesson that was learned is that older generations of people have something to give and something to teach us as the younger people. And young people, that energy that we have is something that we should both collaborate with, because new ideas and old ideas can still work together in order to make something profound happen, make change actually happen. But both parties have to be open to doing it. And I thought that this movie showed how the old and the new was able to get together and show like, hey, we have an idea, we know that there needs to be change, and we're gonna make that happen regardless. So I thought that was really, really like a very good lesson, to where you can collaborate with any people of any age and be able to get something done. It just has to be a matter of people wanting to do it, and understanding that the bottom line is that Black people needed jobs, needed freedoms, and this Civil Rights Act needed to be passed. So how we going to get it done? You can be mad at me how you want to get it done, but it's going to get done. And the fearlessness of just Black people in general during that age, like the civil rights people during that age, like the opening scene to where the people were sitting at the lunch counter and just like, they were getting yelled at, screamed at, food getting sprayed on them. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to the Black History Museum in Memphis, and it's the museum to where Martin Luther King himself was assassinated. And they turned that Lorraine Hotel into a museum. In that museum, before you get to the room where he was assassinated, they have lunch counter that you can sit at. And you put on headphones and you can actually feel, not to the extent of what it really was, but you can feel the extent on what it would feel like for someone to be yelling and screaming at you. And then you ask yourself, how much willpower do you actually have? How nonviolent are you actually, where you can sit and deal with someone actually yelling at you, screaming at you, spitting on you, throwing food on you? Because we all have a limit and we all have a trigger to where nonviolence is out and we laying hands on you, period. But just the training and the skill that those young people had to sit at that counter and take that, like, I recommend anybody to go to the History Museum in Memphis and just check out those exhibits. That's probably one of the best African American museums ever that I've been to. Lastly, like, I somehow in certain movies I always tend to shed a tear. I don't know why, but I was like shedding a tear at the end of the movie, where after the march was over and Rustin, he was just like, people were kind of praising him for his good work and him pushing through and him actually making it happen. To where at the end they were like, oh, the Big Ten, we've been told to go to the White House to speak with John F. Kennedy. They were telling Rustin, like, thank you so much, like, you made this happen. They was like, man, you should come too. And he was like, nope, I'm just a servant. And when he took the bag from one of the workers who was cleaning up, and he was like, I'm gonna just stay here and clean. And when he started picking up the trash, like, that filled my soul. Like, I started to cry. I'm kind of getting emotional about it now, because how many of us can humble ourselves and actually do the work, be honored, but stay humble enough to still go out and help the team? That was just really, really powerful to me. And I'm gonna switch topics before I actually start crying, but this movie was really, really powerful. It was a really, really good movie, and I recommend anybody seeing it. I don't know how of a family movie this movie is, but it is something for people to watch and understand, because we're not too far from that time period and we're still fighting for things to this day. I just thought that this was a really, really good movie, a timely movie. I wish it actually came out on MLK Day so people could watch it, but hey, it came out in November and movies last forever, so you can definitely go check it out. Other than that, this is Popcorn and Slush Movie Review with me, J.O.C. Come back next time where we'll be reviewing a whole nother movie, a whole nother vibe, and we'll see what happens from there. Have a good one. Definitely get you some food. Peace.